Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football Dill. Billy Napier, the Florida Gators, winding down spring practice with their spring game Saturday afternoon. And I'll tell you this, following along with kind of some of the storylines, some of the players stepping up, this 100% sums up my optimism about Florida going into 2025. And what's the big storyline about that, Dill? DJ Lagway did not throw a single football in this game. And look, I get it. The reason, number one, to believe in this Florida team going into 2025 is quarterback DJ Lagway. Arguably the best quarterback in the country. Not enough people appreciate the talent that is going to be around DJ Lagway heading into the 2025 year. I mean, you take a look at how they ran the football. You talk about the young pass catchers who are stepping up in this offense. Yes, DJ Lagway is going to be the engine of this offense. The amount of talent that's around DJ Lagway, it is real. And it's so funny because, 4 weeks ago, as we were heading into spring practice, we had some question marks about the wide receiver room going into 2025. I think it's fair to say that all the question marks we had about the pass catchers going into 2025, not only are we not worried about how good the pass catchers are, now we think this could be a strength of this football team going into 2025. It starts with Dallas Wilson, who is going to be a difference maker, arguably wide receiver one for this Florida offense, but it's a lot of names that we got to talk about. Before we get into it, as always, to the Florida fans, just want to say thank you to you guys. And I think more importantly, let it fly in the comments section. 56,000 Florida fans showing up for the spring game. I'm sure many listening were at this game. Please let it fly in the comments section with some of your big takeaways, some of the players that pop for you guys. Appreciate y'all rocking with it. It truly has been a blast talking this football team over the last couple of weeks in spring practice. The support y'all have shown means the world. Appreciate you guys. If y'all do enjoy it, consider subscribing to the channel. Dill, without further ado, I do want to get to the backup quarterbacks seemingly, playing pretty well this afternoon, but I think we have to start with the pass catchers on the outside, most notably Dallas Wilson and Dill. When DJ Lagway comes back healthy, that combination, and what's so exciting for Florida fans, it ain't only going to be in 2025, it's going to be in 2026 too, but the DJ Lagway, Dallas Wilson connection has every opportunity to be elite in the 2025 year.
Because especially with the skill set Dallas Wilson has, that you
Yeah.
could probably argue no one else in that room was going to have if it wasn't going to be him. That bigger body, ability to work down the field, and that's where DJ Lagway was at his best last year. And you certainly saw some maybe inconsistencies at times with just like doing the basics for Lagway, especially earlier in the season. But there was never any doubt that when he wanted to push the ball down the field, he could be elite, and he really was. So again, they needed Dallas Wilson to be this guy that it sounds like he was in the spring to round out.
And what fascinates me about Dallas Wilson, I feel like, and I'll put my hand up and kind of take the blame for this. I feel like at times I've treated him like a one-trick pony pass catcher. Just this big vertical wide receiver. I'm really big, I run really fast, and have great ball skills. Yes, that is the best part about Dallas Wilson's game. But Dill, kind of reading about what you saw in the spring game, seeing some of the highlights of him going to work, there's a little bit more polish to the route tree as well. He can work the middle of the field. He can be a dog after the catch. And so Dallas Wilson's coming in as a freshman not only to be this big body vertical pass catcher, he's going to be that, but he can be a lot more. He can be a true wide receiver one for this Florida offense. Now, the next name we have to shout out is Vernell Brown. Look, he kind of plays a similar role to Eugene Wilson, who was not out there today, kind of coming back healthy for 2025. Get the ball in his hands and go let him impact the game. And that's the second thing that kind of intrigues me about this pass catcher room is you have your big body pass catchers, the guys who are going to work vertically, J. Michael Sturdivant and Dallas Wilson. And I think it's worth noting, J. Michael Sturdivant sounds to be a hit too for Florida in the portal. But then you have, Vernell Brown, Eugene Wilson when he comes back. Aiden Mizell has taken a step from year 2 to year 3. Tank Hawkins, another guy. You have a lot of guys that also, when you get the football to them in space, can make some things happen as well. It's a really talented and it's a really well-balanced pass catch room with guys that can do all sorts of things in this wide receiver room in 2025.
And you said Aiden Mizell might be the most like fun name in this
I agree.
track because, again, obviously it is the spring game and we didn't get to watch it up here in Rochester, New York. But I did see that tweet out that play that like he does have an acceleration and a burst and like a
Yeah,
get up that is really like he's a guy I played
he
pretty good last year, started to come on a little bit towards the
agreed.
end of the year. He's a guy like I'd be really excited about kind of making some more plays and being a little bit more impactful in the
Yeah,
offense.
and he was a guy that you probably knew needed a year or two before he was ready to get. He would, that was a slender frame that struggled with some of the physicality aspects of playing in the SEC. Well, now year three, and like you said, you saw the light flicker late last year for Aiden Mizell. It sounds like that light is turning on, and the crazy part is I don't even know if he's going to start for Florida, but he's certainly going to be in the rotation. Florida's got some difference makers at the pass catcher position, and then the running game. You know what? It starts with the offensive line. That's a big physical unit that's played a lot of football together. That's another thing not enough people are talking about. Like this offensive line continuity with this unit, the depth that they have seemed to found as well. This should be a really good unit, not only protecting DJ Lagway, but running the football too. We know Jaden Baugh's that guy. Dill, how about Jacoby Jackson? I believe he was kind of pushing that 200-yard mark in this spring game. It's not only the pass catchers, it's not only DJ Lagway, it's also what this team can be as an elite rushing attack. You look at this offense and say, hey, what can't they do going into the 2025 year?
And that's the tough when you're evaluating, especially the offensive line. Like we talked about with Ohio State, like when one unit gets the better of
Yeah,
the
well,
other, that's where
agreed.
you always like kind of like
Agreed.
wrestle. But that's not surprising to me, frankly, that the offensive line played better. I think when you look on paper, when you look at the way they finished out that year,
Yeah.
this offensive line, I certainly would expect to be one of the better units in the
Yeah,
conference.
and it's probably worth noting that maybe you leave this game having some concern. Like, I don't want it to be a strictly sunshine pump episode. I think there's a lot of really exciting things you can take away, and we'll talk about the question marks we might have on the defensive line. One, the offensive line, like you said, we expect to be really good, and Florida on the defensive line was dealing with some injuries as well that we'll talk about. The last storyline, man, you got a little bit more confidence in the depth of this quarterback room. And look, if Florida wins the SEC, makes a run for the national championship, two things of which I think are very capable. This Florida team is very capable of doing. It's going to be with DJ Lagway at quarterback, but it's nice to know that both Harrison Bailey and it sounded like Aiden Warner kind of seemed like the more consistent quarterback in that room today. They can come in and spot duty and run the offense. It sounds like Aiden Warner is not the Aiden Warner that we saw in the 2024 year, which I think Florida fans feel more comfortable about where this room sits because we were kind of obviously DJ Lagway nursing the shoulder. You're kind of concerned about what the quarterback room looks behind him. I think you left having some confidence in this room. And Dill, I guess to summarize the offense, it looked like the offense was moving the football and it looked like the pass catchers were really standing out. They're doing all this without DJ Lagway slinging the pillar on. Like, what does this offense look like when DJ Lagway comes back healthy? You have to be so fired up. Now, defensive side of the football. Let's start with this. You were missing arguably the best football player on this defense in Caleb Banks. He hasn't been available for spring coming back from an injury. Dontre Robinson went down early. It sounded like he did not go back into the game. The depth in the middle of the defensive line, to me, and I've talked with some Florida fans, and they kind of agree. Maybe if there's one spot on this roster that you're maybe looking to add one more addition in that spring portal window, it's probably in the middle of that defensive line just to make sure we're deep enough to make a run late in the season, especially on that defensive line.
Yeah, because that is the hard part. Like when you're down a Caleb Banks, and Caleb Banks is
He's the guy.
seemingly so far ahead of almost anyone else in this
Yeah,
defensive bathroom.
yeah.
That's not like Caleb Banks.
It's one
And
of the
he
best.
maybe would have been a first round pick in this draft. So like
Yeah,
he's obviously dominant. So when you're down him, yeah, it is kind of tough to plug that hole, especially on the fact that that is the one question that I think is
yeah,
glaring for almost everyone. Because you look, the linebackers are good. I think you have all the confidence in the world that the secondary is going to be good. Sound like some of the young guys are playing well,
mm,
like Ben Hanks, Hilton
yeah.
Stubbs. Like, so you like what you're hearing. But when you are down, you're like your guy in the middle of your defense. So yeah, that can probably happen a little bit. What sounds like it happened where Florida's running the ball kind of at will a little bit.
Yeah, I agree. And especially when you look at how this defense is composed and how good this linebacker room could be. Like I'm trying to put as good of a defensive line I can in front of Florida. And look, out on the edge, I feel great. Like I think Tyreek Sapp's one of the most underrated players in all of college football. George Gums really started to emerge late last year. You have LJ McCray going into year two. Jaden Woods, as a true freshman, is going to play for Florida. Out on the edge, you feel good. You're just looking for some more bodies maybe on the inside. And again, because of how athletic your linebacker room is, I want those guys playing free and downhill. Well, make sure your defensive line's up to snuff. Back end of the defense still, and I know Florida was able to throw the football pretty effectively. And you're also down a lot of guys in the back end too, right? Dejon Johnson not practicing, Sharif Denson, Aaron Gates. Drake Stubbs coming up with a pick, tackling in space pretty well from what it sounds like. Look, I know Drake Stubbs, the interception was a tip ball, kind of came right into his hands. Let's not pretend like that was Drake Stubbs been doing that. Go back to his high school film. This dude's just always around the football. Like at some point, you just have to acknowledge that Drake Stubbs' instincts in the back end as a ball hawking safety, elite. And you know Florida wants to force turnovers. Still, I look at Lagonza Hayward and Drake Stubbs and say, I know Jordan Castell and Bryce Thornton are good football players. It's going to be hard to keep some of this young talent in the back end off the field because the playmaking ability they offer, and they both sound like they are physically ready to play SEC football year one in their careers.
And that's especially what you're hearing from what Ben Hanks was doing. And I know he was in some battles with some really good wide receivers, but like having that like
Yeah,
competitive, like wanting to be out there. I think I heard the quote that he was maybe a little handsy and get like again, those are kind of things but like that is the mentality you need to be able to play with from that secondary spot. So like you hear those younger players kind of coming in maybe a little early there than you were seeing some Florida guys come in earlier in Billy Napier's tenure where it didn't seem to flick on as quickly. If you
yeah.
can get Ben Hanks and Stubbs going early and Lazonga Hayward like that, that'd be a really exciting development.
It's and you probably need some of those names to step up a little bit. You know, Gregory Smith hitting the transfer portal, Jameer Grimsley, you know, working through an injury. You're probably going to need some of those young guys to step up. This what you just said, I think, makes a lot of sense. You know, I really am a fan. You talk about, and we've talked about this throughout spring. Like I've been critical at times of Billy Napier and his tenure at Florida. One of the things you can't be critical of is the hit rate they've had at the high school ranks. Like they don't miss on a lot of guys, and a lot of guys that are going into year two and year three are some of your better football players that you've recruited out of the high school ranks. But
But I think
this,
like you get this program in a better shape. Like I think even the young guys come in with a different like edge than probably it did. Like when they were going in early and they were losing, and you were kind of cleaning out the rot, if you will, from what felt like it was kind of left a little bit, where guys weren't very competitive on the defensive side. You
yeah,
didn't tackle, you didn't play physically. Like
yeah.
now that's almost like like when Georgia comes in, their freshmen coming and they're kind of
Well,
ready to
that's
go.
what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying is the freshmen that Florida has brought in this 2025 class are seemingly really ready to go. Like Dallas Wilson, Vernell Brown, Jaden Woods, Lagonza Hayward, Drake Stubbs. It sounds like Ty Jackson's a good football player. He's just kind of buried in the depth chart of a stud linebacker room. I'm kind of with you. Like the freshmen that Florida's bringing in this 2025 cycle, that they seem like many of them are
But
ready
I
to
think a
contribute.
lot of that has to do with the like not only the talent, like Florida's been recruiting pretty well for the most part under Billy Napier, but having the culture maybe flip on a little bit where
Yeah,
last year, like towards the end of the year, you started to expect to win games. Like that Ole
yeah,
Miss game wasn't like you weren't totally floored, like, oh, we beat Ole Miss. Ole
yeah.
Miss was a really good team. 2 years ago, I would have been like, oh wow, Florida winning a big game, like wouldn't have thought
It's
necessarily.
the Dill. It was the
Actually,
LSU
it did
game.
seem to switch a
It's
little.
like the LSU game to me. And I know it's kind of crazy to say, but it's like the LSU game, and then how you finish out the season. Then your basketball team wins a national championship, and like just the buzz that's going on in Gainesville right now. It's real. Like they're not going to be a lot of programs that are putting 56,000 people in the stands like Florida just did. The buzz is real, and I would probably agree with that as well. We'll close it out there. Appreciate you guys rocking with it again. Please let it fly in the comment section. We'll probably talk about some, lingering questions going into the spring transfer portal window in the coming days. To the Florida fans, been a blast. Been a blast talking this team in spring practice. Appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to y'all later. Peace.